Welcome back to GSMC's Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, today joined by my friend and co-host Nolan here. If you're just tuning in, we just finished going over some potential players around the NFL that could get traded. In this segment, we turn our attention to Saquon Barkley. He made a very interesting comment over the weekend saying that he might retire early. In a couple more words, he said, "One day I might be ballin'. The next day I might just say it's time to hang it up," a la Barry Sanders, his favorite player, a guy that he gets compared to a lot. An interesting discussion to have. Is this a trend going on in the NFL here, and how much longer is this going to go on for, that we see these guys retire early, especially after Saquon had such a year like that? But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, June 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into those comments from Saquon Barkley here, Nolan. It's very interesting and maybe a little scary for the Eagles star running back after having a historic season, nearly breaking the single season rushing record. If you include the playoffs, he did break the single season rushing record. He had an incredible year, culminating in an Offensive Player of the Year berth, just being named Offensive Player of the Year win, I should say, a Super Bowl championship, and being named the cover athlete of Madden. Now that comes with its own thing, curses on curses on curses, right? But regardless of that, the conversation that we're having right now is this possibility of Saquon retiring early. He is someone that has for a very long time been an incredible running back. Right now, finally getting that recognition as the best running back in the NFL after going over to the Eagles. He signs an extension. To hear stuff like that, how scared, scale of 1 to 10 for you, Nolan, are you, if you're an Eagles fan, for him to retire a little bit early?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's quoting Barry Sanders, possibly, I would say, in my opinion, one of the best running backs of all time, top, honestly, the best running back of all time, in my opinion. And just like Sanders, Sanders retired very early into his career. He retired. He had 10 seasons in the NFL. Saquon's already been in it for 7 years, 7 to 8 seasons now. And if he wants to take the same path Sanders did, he's already gone to 2 seasons. And if I'm the Eagles fan, I'm a little nervous because Saquon Barkley has proved to be the second best running back in the NFL last year, maybe the best. Derrick Henry and him, maybe, or Jahmyr Gibbs. Those are the top three in my opinion. But he can prove. He just proved he left the Giants. Sorry, you're a Giants fan. That probably must have stunk for you. But he left the Giants after being there for years on end. He leaves, wins the Super Bowl his first year there. And if I'm an Eagles fan, I wouldn't be more nervous. I would just be kind of more mad. I wouldn't want my superstar player, my running back who we just got, to leave only after, 2 or 3 seasons. I'd want him to be there as long as he can. But obviously, as a player, as himself, he's got to focus on what's best for him. And if he thinks retiring early is the best thing for him, he should do it. It's honestly all about honestly a lot more NFL recently has been a lot more mental health, and maybe there's no mental health stuff at play. I mean, he's obviously running back, getting hit a lot. Maybe stuff happens to your body, you wear down. You want to take care of not only your body but your mind as well. And as a running back, he's taking a lot of hits. Obviously, he's a running back, and I think him retiring early wouldn't necessarily be because of him not loving the game. I think he still absolutely loves the game. I think it would just be, he wants to take care of himself and be able to stay with his family, be able to be there with his family and not have, some sort of damage to his body that prevents or him to do certain things that he likes to enjoy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting thing. And I want to talk about this more on a general thing than just the potential of Saquon retiring early with the shelf life of a running back, right? The quote unquote ceiling, the hard limit of once you hit 30 years old, you fall off a cliff as a running back, right? That's, you know, I think there's special guys that can get past that, and Saquon Barkley is one of those special guys. Derrick Henry is past that, and he hasn't really shown a dip in production. There are plenty of guys that I think have the ability to continue to be this dominant player post that imaginary running back line. But the question here is, does it really affect these guys' legacies? Recency bias is a very powerful thing. I like to think about Russell Westbrook as a really good example, Chris Paul as a good example, as these guys that in the NBA are Hall of Famers. No doubt about it, right? But if they had retired 5 years ago, if Westbrook had retired before he went to the Lakers, right? If Chris Paul had retired after he was with the Suns, we would be talking about these guys' legacies a lot different. Is this something that you think affects the long-term view of how we take a look at these athletes? Barry Sanders, for instance, remembered as one of the greatest running backs of all time. He retired early and he's a big what if, but is he a guy that would be remembered like that if he kept going until the wheels fell off? It's a really interesting question here.
Really is, because Barry Sanders is, like I said, I think already talked about he has talked about he's one of the best running backs of all time, only playing about 10 seasons in the NFL. If he played for maybe, 5 more seasons, if he could, which he definitely could have, but let's say, if he played for 15 seasons, he could arguably be the best running back of all time if he kept up exactly what he was doing. Granted, talk about basketball. Russell Westbrook. If he retired after, he never went to the Lakers, he retired after Houston. He would be honestly relegated, talked about honestly probably better than he is right now. He obviously OKC prime oak. Then he went to the Wizards. He was Mr. Triple Double with the Wizards. Then he went to Houston with James Harden. I mean, there is no time in his career where you could say he fell off, except for when he went to LA. If he ended his career before then, he would be talked about as possibly one of the greatest shooting guard or point guards of all time. He's up in that conversation. But if he did that before, went to LA, where kind of tarnished his legacy. He couldn't shoot, he couldn't score, he couldn't play. He wasn't doing nearly as much as he used to. He no, he would be in greater talk. Same with Chris. I mean, Chris Paul's still been doing his thing. He's still, he's a pass first player, so he's doing his thing over there. So Chris Paul's never really changed. He's always been kind of, pass first, shoot an open player. So I think he's still kind of fine. But Saquon, if he retired, let's say in 2 seasons after about 10 seasons in the NFL, I mean, possibility of him not making the Hall of Fame is pretty high at that point. I think he's a great current running back, but if you look at an all-time scale, he would not nearly be close enough to make the Hall of Fame. And I think if he retired early, it would make an impact on his legacy, because let's say he played like Barry Sanders. Let's say he played for 5 more seasons, 15 seasons, and he kept doing what he was doing. He maybe could have won, a few more Offensive Players of the Years, maybe an MVP, even though it's mostly given to quarterbacks now. Let's say he managed to win one. At this rate, he absolutely could. He maybe wins one of those, maybe another Super Bowl or two with the Eagles, if possible. He could be a Hall of Famer. But if he retires early, doesn't get any of those awards, won't make the Hall of Fame, and then he will be considered, big what if. What if he kept playing? What if he was able to keep playing at his level, win more awards, and then he would have made the Hall of Fame? It's only what ifs at that point, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And you brought up a couple of really good points there of, guys that retired early, they don't quite have that legacy because of that early retirement. I think of a guy like Luke Kuechly, who is and should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think because of his early retirement, he doesn't quite get that recognition, and he got passed over in that first ballot last season, right? There are guys that should be remembered more fondly than they are, either because they stuck around too long or they left too early. And it's kind of an art form to figure out exactly when to retire. It's not an easy thing to do because, a lot of times these people, they want to go until the wheels fall off. And sometimes that's just a little bit too much for your legacy, right? And people have that bad taste in your mouth at the end, like a Celtic Shack, for instance, right? People don't talk about that, but like those things happen sometimes. Around different sports. It's just a fact of it. And the fact that Saquon Barkley is already talking about retirement, if I were an Eagles fan, is a little bit scary. No doubt about it. He's someone that has accomplished basically the peak of a running back. He's won a Super Bowl. He has been named Offensive Player of the Year. He just had a season where he was the all-time leading rusher, if you include the playoffs. He is a guy that, if he had played Week 17, would have also broken the single season record in the regular season. He just had an all-time year, maybe the best running back season ever. And he's coming off that already talking about retirement. So I think it's a little bit serious, right? If I had to put my panic meter on it, right, my 1 to 10 panic meter, I'm putting it at about a 6 right now, because he's not talking about right now, but you lose out on a couple years of a prime Saquon Barkley. That hurts this Eagles team that is so much built around him and that run game, specifically with Jalen Hurts. Even though they do have a lot of those very strong wide receivers and weapons, it hurts them a lot. And to have him already have his mind thinking about it, not necessarily a great sign for the future, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they are surrounded by plenty of talent there in Philly, where honestly he doesn't need to have the workload that he does. There is so much talent. You obviously have one of the best quarterbacks in the game right now, Jalen Hurts. He can honestly, if he wanted to, he could play running back. I mean, he's just that big of a guy. He, is he's not, no, I wouldn't say fast. He's pretty fast, but you put him in the backfield, he could probably last a few possessions. I would say so. You got plenty of receivers. You got Devontae Smith. The Slim Reaper of the NFL. I would say. He's not. He's fast. He's agile. He's quick. If you're throwing it up to him and it's a 50-50 ball, you best believe he's coming down with it. I mean, he's just a great receiver over there. Backwards, great tight end. I mean, he's gone. Is he still there in Philly, or did they trade him off this season? Do you know?
They've still got him.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, they still have him. They have so many weapons that are still in Philly, and he could actually just take a few. If they let's say it's a close game, they could honestly still rest him. They could keep him out of the game for a possession or two and make sure he's fine, because like I said, there is a lot of talent over there in Philly where they don't need to use him all the time. Yeah, it's great to have him, but like a thing with the Lions, a Dave Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs backfield, they're splitting possessions, and they're going to keep their lifespans. They're going to keep their longevity. It's going to get longer because of them just splitting snaps and them not being. They're getting half the workload, which is that's going to help you last longer. If the Eagles can manage to go out and get a solid running back too to help Saquon split those reps, I think the Eagles fans. I think he'd end up probably reverting that statement, and he'd keep playing longer just so he doesn't have to take the brute force that he's taking right now. Even though he's not getting hit that much. I mean, he's really so agile. He's really, really quick off his feet. He really makes a lot of good moves, but he's still getting hit a decent amount. He's a running back, obviously he is. But you get a solid running back too to back up that backfield. Split possessions with him, keep him. Give him a rest, keep him rested, and get him out there for a possession. Have him at his best, and then keep subbing in and out, and that'd keep him in the game longer, keep him in the league longer, and possibly keep him just in the league so he can keep winning awards and maybe make the Hall of Fame. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. But definitely something to keep an eye on here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the world of baseball. Yet another disappointing result for Paul Skeens and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Paul Skeens, 8 innings, 1 run. He's now 4-6 on the season. There's been a little bit of chatter around what his future might look like. He's not too happy over there in Pittsburgh, but he's got a lot of years left to struggle through that Pirates organization. Should they trade him, he would be worth maybe the biggest haul in the history of trade hauls. Talk about that next, coming up here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.